another conversation on my show, C2C, Coach to Coach Central, where we have raw and honest business confessions, business conversation, honestly. But to make it more dramatic, we decided to throw the word confession. And I'm super excited today to introduce my guest. We have Robin Waite, right?
It.
I'm so excited and I'm super happy that you agreed to be in this show because I think you can share so much wisdom. Hi, Robin. So glad to have you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Lidia. Very excited. Given the what we were discussing just before you hit record, I'm like, I know we're going to be talking about some good stuff today.
Could you please introduce yourself? Just a couple of sentences, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder of Fearless Business, which is a coaching program mainly for coaches, but also we accept in the occasional consultant or freelancer into that as well. That ties in with my background. I used to run a marketing agency for 12 years doing sort of web design and branding and things like that. And then sold it in 2016, accidentally fell into coaching and mentoring. And you're welcome to sort of, if you want to quiz me about that, fire away with the questions. But I'm very fortunate to have landed on a profession, a career, which I just absolutely love. I never get that Sunday night dread when when you got Monday coming around and work. I'm super pumped when Sunday and Monday arrive because I get to work with such amazing people now. And I can't see myself doing anything different now for the rest of my years, sort of, working, whatever that looks like. But yeah, I've been coaching now for 8 years and love it.
Right. No, that's amazing. And to throw in what we've discussed just before I hit the record, you shared your why. Would you mind sharing that with our listeners as well?
Yeah, I have a bit of a gripe, a problem with the coaching certification bodies actually, which are out there. So I'm probably going to get myself in a bit of trouble here, but what I've seen of the industry is that there's a lot of bodies which will certify coaches, and we have some incredible people, incredible coaches in this industry. But my gripe is my trouble with that is that they don't cover marketing, they don't cover sales, they don't teach these amazing coaches how to get clients. And it's good for me because I have a job now as a result of that. People come to me because I help them to solve that issue. But I do think it's a bit unethical to take, several $1,000s off people, give them their coaching certificate and then just shove them out the door without the ability to be able to grow a business, from it. So I'm on a personal mission basically to make sure that we have more amazing coaches out there in the world who are fully equipped to be able to go out and get clients and then help the amazing people which they get to work with. Because the power of coaching, I've experienced it from being coached myself. That's kind of part of how I got into it in the first place, but also then seeing the impact it's had with my clients that I get to work with. We just need more great clients and with the skill set to get clients of their own.
Right. And, I'm amazed because we share the same frustration with the industry. I have exactly the same frustration and we share the same mission. I'm on the same path. We probably have slightly different kind of focus. You focus on coaches and helping them to scale and grow. And I focus on this first step, this transition into coaching. So on that point, but I'm super happy that I'm not alone on this path, because I think I hope we have more people like us and we have more coaches succeed. That's exactly my mission financially, because it is just impossible to sustain if you don't succeed financially. And you're exactly right that there is lack of proper business and marketing part in the coaching certifications that are out there. There are millions out there. Now, on the transition, I wanna ask you. You mentioned that you did that transition from having a marketing agency into coaching. Yeah, share that story.
Yeah, well, so I ran the agency for 12 years, and there was, like any business, there's good times, not so good times through that journey. And the last couple of years were very tumultuous, just in terms of it was probably the most successful time that we had in the agency. So we grew it to, I used to have a business partner as well, but he sort of left the business about 2 years before I ended up selling it. But we grew it to about £250,000 a year revenue. So it's just a small local marketing agency, but so about $300,000 US a year. I had a small team of 4 people, but one morning I was out with my cycling club, and I went down a hill at 52.5 miles an hour on my push bike, and at the bottom of the hill I just broke down just in floods of tears. And it dawned on me, my friends were obviously rightly worried about me. And I was like, don't worry, just go and get coffee and cake at the cafe and I'll meet you there in a bit, you know. But when I started to then sort of question like why I was feeling the way that I did, I was just hugely overwhelmed with the responsibility of running this agency. My family, my eldest daughter was about one and a half at this point, and my youngest daughter was about to arrive. We had 2 planned cesareans, so she was about to arrive in sort of three weeks time. And I was just totally unfulfilled, just lots of late nights. My team were a bit dysfunctional, like hard work to manage. I had about 180 clients, and again, they were quite tricky, you know, just constantly calling on me and drawing my energy and attention. And it was too much. So I went home to my very heavily pregnant wife, and I said, and she knew I'd been unhappy for a while, and I said, I've made a decision. And she's like, great, you know, what is it? And I said, I'm going to close the agency down, because she's like international sign of distress, you know, because we're about to go through this huge next step in our family's life, and then I can't
Yeah.
make a decision like that. And what ultimately happened was word spread on the grapevine that I was winding the agency up, and so somebody came in and made me a small offer of cash for the business, so for the client base and a bit of intellectual property. And then I took time out. We welcomed Sophie into the world, my youngest daughter, and you know, I got to enjoy a bit of family time, which is what I was craving. And then it got back to like, right, I need to have some adult conversations again now and meet business people, because it's always been my passion. Started networking and telling people a story, and several agencies started gravitating towards me and said, "Oh, we're interested in growing and selling our agency." So they bribed me with coffee and cake. There's a theme here. And I started doing informal mentoring, not for it. I didn't charge, just, you know, sit down, have a chat, give them some ideas about their business. And then as I went through I realized I loved these conversations. I never got to experience them really with my agency. And I just loved these like high level strategic conversations about growth and about pricing and productizing services. So all the things I help clients with now. And it just unlocked for me that I had this knowledge, which I just didn't really realize I had. I'd been in this place of service with the agency for so long. So eventually that a friend of mine suggested business coaching might be a thing which I would consider. And it wasn't something I'd heard of before. So I looked into it. Trained with an amazing coach, a guy called Rich Litvin, who wrote and just his style of coaching I absolutely fell in love with. I did a couple of his courses. I started to follow other coaches and learn about different coaching frameworks. So started off with the basic sort of grow model. I got into Byron Katie. I don't know if you've come across her work
Yeah, of
before.
course.
So it's
No,
called
of
The
course.
Work. And she wrote a
Yeah.
great book called Loving What Is. So I learned about that
Yeah.
framework for sort of holding space for people when there's, you know,
That's
conflict
amazing.
happening.
She has amazing framework, and you know the way it came to her is another amazing story.
That's it. And so what I've done is I've gone down a very untraditional coaching route. So I don't have like an NLP certification or a certificate or anything like that. I've just followed great coaches and kind of modeled a lot of the work which they were doing. I have done some official coaching courses, but like Rich Litvin doesn't give you a certificate to say you're a
Right.
coach, because he believes in everybody has the power to be a coach. And unless, of course, it's mind, body, spirit, and you're dealing with like health and things like that, where there is like an ethical line where you probably do need to have some kind of medical certificate,
Right.
you know, a qualification. And also, I mostly work with business. I've worked in business all my life. Business frameworks are straightforward enough. You don't need a certificate to do that. You just need experience. So
Right.
I probably cross over a little bit between coach and mentor, you know, so I have a bit
Right.
of both. But what it's enabled me to do is just kind of be able to get out there and just help businesses to grow and prosper. And I guess I had to go through that tumultuous period for 12 years to realize that's not necessarily the best way to run a business, and actually show people a better way to grow their coaching practice.
Yeah. Have you heard? I don't know if you heard the term coach salting. I love that
Mm.
term. I'm not the one who came up with this. I think that's what I do when I coach people. I do introduce a little bit of mentoring because that's what I did 10 years ago, and a little bit of consulting when I just tell them, okay, well, if you want this, these are the steps to do, right? Because
Yeah.
so I agree with you. I'm also an advocate for the approach that you can use different tools. Not necessarily coaching is a great tool, but not the only tool that out there. And in some situations, consulting or mentoring or some other modalities could be more useful. And as long as the coach realizes the capacity, the role that they had, I call it the hat. I put my coaching hat on and off. As long as the coach knows what he's doing or she's doing at the moment, I think that works way better than kind of staying there.
Yeah, that's it. And like the thing is as well, like I have a firm ethos, which is never to be the smartest person in the room, because you're in the wrong room otherwise at that point. You've reached a point where you're not really learning and stretching yourself for a start. But the main thing is as well, there are so many amazing coaches and therapists out there who have skills which I don't have, and I'm able to collaborate and work with them. So one example of this during COVID, obviously, which was a very testing time for so many people. I mean, at the time, I'm trying to think now how many clients I would have had at the time. I think we had about 80 people in our group, and I noticed that a lot of people really struggling sort of mindset wise with, you know, like me. I mean, it was like we had 5 months in the UK here where we were locked down, homeschooling, various things like that. And a lot of my clients, again, they have, you know, they're sort of 30s, 40s, and 50s, so they've got families and kids themselves. And so I could see that there was this enormous weight of stress sort of in the community. So what we did is I have so, you know, all these amazing coaches in my community. So, and they've been through my program, so they understand the principles of what fearless business is about. So we started a regular mindset call once a week alongside my regular sort of weekly coaching call with clients. And it was incredible. You know, I had a certified hypnotherapist running that session, a pure coach, and as well. And it meant that I could focus on the business stuff, you know, practical, tactical, and then she could focus on sort of much more of the holistic sort of mindset related work and deal with it from a therapy perspective, because it was creating trauma for a lot of people. So I always encourage like coaches, collaborate, bring in other associate coaches. That's a great way to scale your business and plug those holes where you don't have those skills.
No, amazing, amazing. Absolutely. In many cases, for example, take addictions, right? When people work with bad habits, with addictions, I think working alongside the therapist and the coach, just focusing on different angles, that's the best result you can get. So I totally agree that working alongside with other specialists can get you the best results that are out there, and knowing your boundaries, knowing where your zone of genius, right, is, and not being ready to coach everybody is one of the best qualities that coach can have. On that point, in terms of niching down, like, what is your point of view? I would be very interested to hear, especially when they're just starting out. What I see in coaches, they stay broad and they have difficulty to choose a niche. So they go and I'm a health coach or I'm a business coach, which cause them quite
Yeah.
quite a bit of troubles, right? Finding clients or getting paid and stuff like that. What is your view, and what would be your suggestions to starting coaches?
Yeah, so niching wise, there's so many different facets to it that I'm not sure many people actually realize. So the traditional sort of approach to niching, if you speak to most marketeers, is like they'll start by looking at demographics. So some of the things you just mentioned there, like health coaching or geographical location, or maybe they work with male, female people within a certain age bracket, you know. So demographics are really easy to identify, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself to finding the dream client. There's always three questions which I encourage clients to ask themselves when they're talking about niching. So the first one is, who do you love working with the most? because that coach client relationship, the bond is so strong. You can't work with clients just for the money, because, you know, if you don't actually really enjoy the work, you're not going to be able to, you know, pour your heart and soul to hold that space comfortably for that client, because your mind will be elsewhere. So you need to work with clients you absolutely love working with. You need to find clients that you can actually get great results with. And this is actually where I would agree with almost starting like your niche broad, because you want to work with a multitude of different types of clients in those early years coaching, if you can find them, so that you can then start to figure out who you love working with and who do you get the best results for. Because there might be, you could go into a certain niche, but you might not be as good at it as maybe you thought you were. But, and then you kind of go down that rabbit hole for a year or 2 years, and then you end up coming out going, oh God, this coaching thing's really hard work. Whereas actually, if you stayed a bit broader and just explored different niches to start off with, and you probably only need to try like 3 or 4 or 5 clients maybe in each niche before you can make a discerning, you know, decision about which one you feel most comfortable sort of stepping into. So a very quick anecdote. So in my first year, I did some work, not just with grassroots businesses that now I get to work with and I've chosen, but I also explored sort of working with what I class as agency sized businesses, like 2 to 10 people. I had a couple of corporate clients just through conversation that said, oh, this sounds interesting, could you come in? Realized I didn't enjoy working with the corporate clients. Not so, I was okay with the agency clients because that was my background, but it wasn't where my heart was. And then gradually I sort of gravitated towards these just one person businesses, coaches, consultants, freelancers, where they're kind of in the first sort of 3 or 4 years of their business journey. But when you make a change to their business, you can see the results of it. They can afford a deposit on their house or their dream wedding, or they can finally have kids because they feel they've got like the space and the affordability to be able to, like, they can manage the money and things like that, and have kids. And that's where my heart is. So, but I had to go through like trying out a few different niches first to then hone in on that. So I do encourage people, well, just try out a few different types first, and then you can start to narrow that down as you get more experience coaching. And then the third one is a practical thing, like find clients that can afford to work with you, because again, like there's too many people who are charging like $50 an hour, $100 an hour for a coaching session, and scratching their heads going, well, I don't understand. I'm a great coach. I don't understand why I'm not making any money. And it's like there is a place for working with those clients. I call them love clients, but you want to have like limit, you want to set boundaries around that. So like 10%, maybe 20% of your clients are love clients, where they almost get a scholarship or a bursary to get to work with you. Or you create some kind of a group setting for them. But in order to have like a sustainable coaching practice, you need to have well-paying clients. It's just which I know sounds very, like, if you've got $1 million in the bank account and you don't need the money, fine.
Yeah.
But not many of us have that luxury, right? You know, many people are sort of living hand to mouth to pay their mortgage and put food on their table. But you do have to figure out what prices to work to in order to, you know, build a sustainable and profitable coaching practice. And then niching wise, to close the loop, so we've got demographics. We've started to sort of touch on psychographics around that personality, a type of person you want to work with. But that also starts to give you a few clues as to, like, when you're starting to attract clients, where do they hang out? So psychographics, think of it as like people's behaviors. So what Facebook groups are they in? What podcasts do they listen to? What journals do they read? What YouTubers are they subscribed to? What magazines are they reading? So what audiobooks or other coaches do they follow? So all of this stuff gives us useful information as to where your ideal client sort of hangs out. And then the bit which is the real key to this, which kind of, I think for me, unlocked like something within me when I realized this, is the third layer, which is like the identity layer. And this is where you end up attracting like like-minded people who have similar interests, because this is how tribes were formed many hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago. We found similar people, we made a village together, we all helped one another, and then we fought the other villages when they came in to take our sheep and cows and stuff like that, right? So it's a similar process when you're finding clients, find similar people. So when I started out, so again, a little story. When I started out, I thought as a coach, I needed to wear a button-down smart shirt, chinos, shiny leather shoes, you know, be very like reserved and everything else. And I felt so uncomfortable like that. It wasn't me. I am naturally introverted. That's why I ran the agency, because I didn't really want to speak to people that much.
Okay.
When I came out of my shell as a coach and then started realizing that a major part of it is like guesting on podcasts and speaking from the stage, and oh, I've actually got to speak to people. That's what coaching is about. I realized it was a great opportunity just to figure out who I was. And it was about 2 years into my coaching journey. I was giving a talk in front of about 150 people. And I said this phrase. I said, business owners need to fear the things in business ever so slightly less that stop them from achieving their goals. And I had a good friend of mine, Adam, who was in the audience, and he literally stood up. I'm mid-flow in this talk. He stood up and he pointed at me. He went, "Robin Waite, the fearless business coach." And it was like literally cut, like the shirt came off. I cast aside the shiny shoes and put my trainers on, and I realized that this is who I am. I want the coaching experience for the businesses I work with to be fun. I want it to be casual. I want it to be not intimidating. I want people when they run their businesses to be who they want to be in their businesses. Because for 12 years, I was locked up in this agency playing this role that just wasn't me. And what's really fascinating is, so I have the cycling and surfing side to my behind the scenes. And since I've got to know my clients within my program, we have somebody who goes out and she does ultra marathon. She's done like 100-mile ultra marathon. We've got another lady in the group who she got divorced during lockdown and goes off doing wild camping on Dartmoor, which is, I wouldn't do that. It's scary as anything, right? So I've come to learn that my clients all have this slightly fearless, edgy side to them outside of their business as well. And I want them to sort of bring that out. So identity, when you're figuring out your niche, the identity layer is massively important. Who are you and who are you trying to attract? And do they reflect what you're about? Again, a lot of coaches, I hate to say it, they chase the money and they end up working with clients that they don't really have any kind of like any natural relationship with, or that identity layer is just a mismatch. And then they wonder why it's like not a very enjoyable process.
Right, right. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. But I want to emphasize for our listeners that it took you some time and action to figure this out. I think you can't figure it out thinking or reading or listening. You can only, it takes time, right? It took some time before you realized that, but it also took action. You were already doing stuff. You were already coaching. You were already speaking. You were already, so you can only, I call it, you can get clarity through action. You cannot get clarity any other way. Now, you do need to read and study marketing, business, of course, but that's not going to give you the answer. The answers come through action, right?
Well, I had I'd been going about, I think 12, 15 months or something like that. So year 2 of my coaching practice. And this amazing woman came into my office. I used to have an office in the local town, and one of the first things she said to me, which is actually a bit of a red flag when I kind of reflect back on it, but she said, "Robin, I think I'm a better coach than you are, but I don't understand why you're so much more successful." And I said, "Okay, let's talk through." And it's a bit of a weird thing to say, but let's talk through it. I said, "Well, tell me, like, how many consultations have you done with prospective clients in the recently?" And she started counting on one hand. She's like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, maybe 4 or 5. I went, "Oh, well, 4 or 5 in the last week's not bad." And she went, No, 4 or 5 in the last year. And I immediately said, "Well, there's your problem." I said, because in my first year of coaching, I did 36 podcast interviews. I did 44 speaking engagements. I set up my own local business networking event where we had 600 people across 12 events that I ran throughout the year. I booked a local event venue and had 200 people down there to do a showcase, and to launch the brand. Most importantly, I sat 125 consultations in my first year. Sounds like a lot, but that's only 2 to 3 a week when you actually break it down, which is more than manageable. And you could see her eyes are sort of widening as I'm telling her about this volume of activity, which I did. But all I did, I looked at other coaches that were successful, like Rich Litvin and other people like that. And I was like, what are they doing? Yeah. They guest on podcasts, they speak on the stage, they run and host events, and they give stuff away for free. So they give books and content and, consultations away for free. And from there, you can then make that invitation to become a client.
No, absolutely. And that actually nicely leads to my next question. And you're still doing that. You're still showing up on the podcast. How many years you in?
So I'm
Yeah,
now in my ninth year coaching. So
there
yes,
you go.
I do three things really. Now, I'm not saying these three things as advice for coaches. So one of the things I've learned is that my marketing mix, my three things that work for me don't often work for everybody else. It's
Yeah,
just that I've doubled down on it. I've just rinsed and repeated it. I've occasionally got distracted by a shiny thing, but I always gravitate back to these three things. And really what they come down to is podcast interviews. So I typically aim to do somewhere between 50 and 100 podcast interviews a year now. So it
yep,
just helps with that brand awareness. It helps massively with building relationships with other amazing people like yourself, Lydia, for a
yeah,
start. So I get to have great conversations. The second thing which I then do is speaking engagements. Now they're harder to come by, and you have to have the books definitely helped me because it
yep,
presents you as that authority credit, authority figure with extra credibility and things like that. So the
yep.
book helped to sort of open the door. But generally, I used to do lots of small local speaking gigs, but now my business is so I have clients in 26 different countries now. We went fully online in 2019 because I just started, people just came from all over the place. I didn't intentionally set out to get clients all over, like globally, but it happened. So now I'm a bit more strategic about the speaking engagements which I take on. So I target sort of specific conferences, which are far more in terms of my niches now, the coaches, consultants, the freelancers, and one
Right.
person businesses. So like last week, for example, I sponsored, sometimes you got to pay to play. It's not always that
Yeah,
you can just rock up and stand on stage and speak.
yeah.
Sometimes you have to pay for it. But I sponsored the Future of Coaching conference here in the UK. There's about 150 people there for that. I didn't speak, but it paves the way for me maybe to be a speaker next year. It's just starting that
Right.
relationship up. And I think this is where, oh, the third thing. So we've got podcast speaking and then my books. So my books, I give
Okay.
away 3,000 copies a year. There's a lot of people out there, coaches especially, who are a little bit guarded. They try and protect all of their information, and they try and like they'll sell like a $9 or a $27 info product or something like that. Stop doing that. Just it has its place, but when you're starting out, just give stuff away, give value, give value, give value. So in terms of like videos, books, whatever medium you're most comfortable with doing it. For me, it just happens to be books. I like writing, so it worked. And yeah, I gift 3,000 copies a year, and I send them all around the world to whoever wants them, basically. Um, so, and then really, it's just about rinse and repeat. And like, here's my podcast tracking, really technical, right?
Love
It's
it.
it's a checklist with, originally I was set a goal to do 30 at the back at Q4 last year, and I've since gone on to stretch it some more. And that's always on my desk. I show up and it
Love it.
says, it reminds me, have you booked yourself onto any podcast day? Do you need to do any follow-up? Do you need to send your headshots or whatever to somebody? So, old school works, believe it or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm also pen and paper person. I am.
There
So
you go.
no, 100%. But I also do, I did a bit of a kind of bit of a search, and you also have YouTube. I see you're pretty active on LinkedIn. So you do kind of throw things in different places.
Yeah, so
How is that working for you?
so the social media stuff, it's a really great question actually. So I actually became antisocial at the start of 2023. And there's a backstory to this, right? So I've lived in a world of internet marketing for like 20 plus years, and the statistics, I'm going to share some stats with you to just show you the change in landscape of the coaching industry, but business as a whole as well. So when I started 20 years ago in the UK, there was 468,000 registered businesses.
Mhm.
Fast forward to today, there's 6 million. So in the UK alone, there are 12
Wow.
times the number of coaches competing for the coaching work that's available to them. The
Yeah.
population hasn't grown 12 times. There aren't 12 times the number of customers, right? And there was some other interesting stuff which has happened as well in the last 20 years. So with the advent of smartphones in the early 2010s, and then also at the same time, the rapid growth of social media, so mainly Facebook and Instagram, and then quickly followed on by LinkedIn and YouTube as well, especially with the advent of fast internet. All of a sudden, you're not competing against 12 times the number of coaches in your local area, your country. You're now competing in this global marketplace. And I was trying, somebody was like, I don't understand how this affects me, Robin. Like, what does this mean for me? And so I was trying to find an analogy which kind of worked. And it's a bit like, imagine if you took all of the coaches in the world and you lined them up on the edge of the Grand Canyon, and this is now social media, and they are just shouting into the abyss, buy my coaching, buy my coaching, buy my coaching, buy my coaching, right? And then there's this one person who has stood back from the edge of the Grand Canyon, and they're holding court. They've got 100 coaches or clients or whatever stood around them, and they're just quietly talking, and these people are listening intently, right? Who are you going to gravitate towards in that scenario? Those million, 2 million, 10 million plus coaches who are shouting into the abyss, or that one person who has captured that audience? And he was like, right, okay, I get it. So the goal, and this is why I stopped doing social media, because we were repurposing content and posting on Twitter like 93 times a day and doing all of the stuff that all the experts tell you to do. And I'm not suggesting you don't do it, by the way. That's not the purpose of this. Like, again, it's horses for courses. I don't know if you have that saying in Israel, different horses for different courses. It's different person. So what I discovered was this thing called partnerships. So this person holding court has already got this audience. Well, what if I was their trusted advisor, their right-hand person there? And so I kind of, I'm there and I hover around, and then some person says, oh, this is my friend Robin. He's, a great coach. He helps people with pricing and packaging up their coaching offer. Why don't, Robin, come in and tell people what you know. And now all of a sudden, without me having to shout or anything like that, I've just got to show up and add some value. I've now, become a part of their audience. And it was my big lesson from this. I worked very hard on several partnerships with people with large audiences, 100,000 plus or 1 million plus audiences. One being a guy called Ali Abdal, who is a fantastic YouTuber.
I know Ali.
So
I also saw you had the podcast interview with Chris Do. I love Chris Do. I've been his fan for a number of years.
Well, I got ask me about that in a second.
Okay.
I've got a story about Chris actually, which I know he won't mind me sharing. But so with Ali, so I worked on the partnership for a couple of years, and then eventually Ali invited me onto the Deep Dive podcast, which is a massive coup. And I had a bit of imposter syndrome because his first guest was Ben Francis from Gymshark, which is like multi-billion-dollar business. So I'm no Ben Francis, but anyway, so he invited me on. That one podcast interview generated 3,000 leads for my coaching practice.
Right.
I haven't had to do any marketing in the last 18 months as a result of that, and I still get leads and inquiries coming through from it. And it's, to quantify it, probably it's done about £250,000, so $300,000 worth of business for my coaching practice. Right? And I'm not one of these scaling coaches, want to do multi-millions. I just want a humble coaching practice where I can make a difference, and for not just for my clients, but also for me and my family as well. And
did you say it took Did you say 2.5, 3 years to build?
Yeah, it was about, so it was about 2 or 3 years where I got introduced to him originally through a mutual friend. I started showing up at his events because I liked what Ali was about anyway. And so kind of started to get into his inner circle, but mainly I was, well, funny story. So one of the events where
I just want to compare, because people think, oh my God, it takes time. It's so long. But if you look at how long would it take you to stand out on social media, that wouldn't be less. You cannot, look at YouTube, any social media, that wouldn't take you less. And the chances are probably lower to stand out with the number of people growing exponentially every year. That's what I wanted to kind of pinpoint, that yes, 2.5, 3 years seems like a very long time. But guys, you will not go, people think about social media as a lottery. How many people win in the lottery? Well, they're probably right. How many people win in the lottery?
Well, I think in the UK, it's like 1 in 12 million or something. So,
there you go. Yeah. Now, this is consistent action with a pretty high chances of success.
Yeah.
You do it right.
Ali's just another person, as is Chris Do, so as is Rich Litvin, all of the people that we sort of mentioned. And so social media, I liken it to, I call it the Noah's Ark style of marketing, because it's growing your audience one by one by one by one by one. Whereas you get something like this land. So here's, again, some stats for you, because I've looked at exactly this. So my social media, I was probably spending 30 hours a week on social before this, doing all of the stuff that everybody tells you to do. With my partnerships now, probably I invest maybe 3 to 4 hours a week. So a tenth of the time. Okay.
Right.
And it's just I have a short list of 10 people. So Chris is on there, Ali Abdal's on there, and then Simon's
Probably
done it.
something like you showed us for the podcast, probably the same card for a partnership, which would make
There it is.
sense.
Yep. So I have a short list of 10 people I would just love to work with because they are my people. I love their message. I love their vibe, like what they're about. And so you have to be intentional. You have to choose the people. They have to have bigger audiences, and you have to kind of get over that bit of imposter syndrome of like, why would they choose me?
Yep.
And then get into their world, just be helpful, add value in their world. So with Ali, for example, I went to an event and there was 600 people there, and they'd all just looked lost at this venue. It's like at a university, and so I put my coat and my bag down and I started like directing people. I was like, oh, the cafe's over there and the auditorium's that way, and Ali will be signing his books afterwards over here. And Ali's general manager, a guy called Angus, walks up to me and he's like, and I already got to know them a little bit because I'd shown up to these events. He's like, Robin, what are you doing? I was like, well, I just was being helpful. I could see everybody was a bit lost. And he's like, well, that's really kind of you, but you don't have to, you're a guest, Rob. You don't have to do that. And I said, no, I want to do it because it's like, it's just, I just want to be helpful. So he went to walk away. He took 3 steps and then he turned around and came back and he said, oh, actually, Robin, I need to pick your brains about something that Ali and me and the team have been discussing. And he talked about this project. Could we speak to you afterwards? Bingo. So just by being helpful, adding value, I had no expectation of anything in return. It just opened the doors up to start the conversation off, and even that was probably 18 months before this opportunity arose. I ended up working with Ali's team. So they're all freelancers. So I ended up working with them. I did it all for free just to pay into the kitty and build the partnership. And then eventually they said, hey, Rob, is there anything you can do for me? And I said, well, and then, the rest is history. So, but all of a sudden now those 10 people on the list. So Ali, I've got the relationship there. I will be back on Deep Dive at some point. I got my dream speaking gig coming up in June. Same methodology, to show up, be helpful, pay into the kitty with brands that I enjoy, people I enjoy hanging out with. So TIMECODES up in Newcastle. And that, there's other opportunities like Chris Doe, for example, you talked about. So out of curiosity, if you had to book Chris for 3 hours one-to-one, what do you think that would cost you?
50 grand? I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So in at the start of January, there was an event happening. It was called the 1 Billion Followers Summit. And I've got 3 clients in Dubai. I've got another mutual friend who's working out there. I'm an associate coach on his program. I've got family contacts and stuff. So I was like being drawn to Dubai. So I booked a plane ticket in the hotel and I went out there for a week. The summit happened to be on. Anyway, Chris heard through the grapevine that I was going to be in Dubai. He was facilitating a workshop and doing a keynote, and he invited me to come and be in the room with him to co-facilitate. Now, it sounds very grand, but I probably only said about 3 things during a 4-hour workshop. But I think it gave him confidence having somebody trusted in the room in this strange country. He paid for as a result of that, he paid for my summit ticket. So for to go to this event, and he paid for this amazing meal that we had underneath the Burj Khalifa, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I thought, how can I pay it forward? Because I'm so grateful for this opportunity to get to hang out with Chris. And I was in his entourage for 2 days. It was great. So Chris runs this fishing trip, like once a year.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Right. It's legendary. I haven't had a chance to go yet, but I will be there. I'll get there in the next couple of years, I hope.
Yeah.
So I figured, we like boats, right? Booking boats in Dubai is like calling an Uber, right? So
yeah, that's
so I
true.
thought, what better way to pay it forward to Chris was to hire a boat for 3 hours on a joyride around the Palm. And then it dawned on me, I was like, he can't get off a boat. So I'm on this boat with him for 3 hours and it only cost me £700. We talked a bit of business, but most of it was just hanging out, just again, paying into that partnership. And he absolutely loved it. The sun was going down. We had some great photos and bits of social media content for him as well, like B-roll, video and stuff. And then, we kind of do the conference, go our separate ways and everything else. And then at the coaching conference I just sponsored, another mutual contact, Daniel Priestley, was there speaking. And he was like, oh, I heard about the boat trip, Rob. So I know, and from Chris, so I know that was a memorable moment for him, and I know he appreciated it, right? So this idea of like paying it forward, just being totally detached from outcomes, just yeah, there would have been a time when £700 to book a boat would have been utterly ludicrous as an idea for me. But I'm 8 years into this journey, and you make these calculated bets, basically, pay into the partnerships, and it works, believe it or not. But what catches a lot of coaches out is this short-term thinking. I post on social and I need to get leads because I need to get money and I need to pay my mortgage. And that's the wrong way to do it. Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game. Like he says that business is not made up of short-term wins or losses.
Yeah.
The infinite game is about staying in business for as long as you possibly can do, which means that you have to price your coaching packages for success and profitability. You need to build sustainable sources of income, not just from your coaching, but building multiple streams of income to protect you, because coaching fluctuates. You'll get 6
Yep.
clients in January and none for the next 9 months. That's just the way that business works, right? So we need to protect ourselves for these tough times and play the long game. And partnerships is like the longest of the long games you can play in business. But when it does work, it's incredible, and I don't want to sound like arrogant or egotistical, but you can see the book Diary of a CEO blurred, but it's over my shoulder here.
I did see a picture of you with the host.
Well, that was an April Fool's. That was a joke, which completely backfired, right? So I did it as like an aspirational thing, thinking, that people might find it a bit funny. But all the comments I got were, "Oh, Rob, congratulations, well done. You really deserve this." And I was like, holy shit, people actually think that I'm ready to go on to Diary of a CEO. And it gave me that little boost of confidence, which you need sometimes, even as a
Yeah,
coach.
no,
You need
absolutely.
those little boosts to kind of get you over the line. And I will be on DOAC. I don't know when, but I will be on DOAC at some point and meet.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure you will. Oh, okay. Okay. I want to honor your time, but I cannot not ask you about your book.
Yes.
Again, you mentioned that you use it you give it away for free. It's probably opening doors for you, right?
Yeah, so the book itself was, again, it was Take Your Shot was a happy accident. There was a bit more intention behind Online Business Startup. That was much more aligned actually with my marketing agency. So it's all about sort of web design and marketing and that side of things. It helped with my raising my profile. It sold about 15,000 copies, so it's done really well, over the years. It was #1 bestseller on Amazon, I think, for about 2.5 years. But the challenge with it was that it was aligned with the agency, not necessarily with my coaching business and what I sort of help people with now. So commercially, I had to write the second book with something that was far more aligned. How I ended up with the topic of it, and I don't want to give too much of a spoiler alert because I'm going to offer signed copies to your listeners as well, Lydia, when we wrap up. Um, I did a webinar in my first sort of year or so, which was originally geared towards web designers because that's my world that I'd come from. I did this webinar. It was great. I had lots of people on it. And then about 5 minutes after I wrapped it up, my phone starts ringing and it rang 2 or 3 times. And I was trying to just wind down after it. I picked it up and there's this guy, Russ, and he was like, "My God, Robin, the webinar was brilliant. I can really see it's going to help my business. Like, I loved what you were talking about in pricing and like way excited." And I was like, "Cool, okay, slow down. Tell me about your agency." And he went, "Oh no, I don't run an agency. I'm a golf pro." I'm like, "Golf pro, how did you end up on my webinar then?" He's like, "Well, a friend of mine knows you and he's recommended I jump onto it." So Russ became my first official coaching client. And we productized his golfing packages. I helped him to reprice it. We came up with how he was going to like do sales conversations with, prospective players when they came into his golf shop. And we go on that journey. And then by page 74, there's a bit of artistic license where we get into his goals and ambitions for his practice and his golf pro business. But I kept telling the story, and everybody kept saying, "You should put that in a book, Robin." So that's it. Take Your Shot is the story of Russ, and he meets this business coach, and obviously the rest is history. There was also, and hopefully this is helpful, practical advice. If you are going to go down the process of writing a book, there's a traditional book which is 40,000 words. It's 250 pages. This is quite a meaty sort of read, and who
Yep.
has time to read like a book like that these days? Let's be fair, right? Um,
I'm like you. I'm like you. I know you listen to books. I'm like you. I listen to books or watch on YouTube.
I do. I'm all over audiobooks now because just traveling around, I do take my daughter swimming and very anyway, but do lots of events. So it's easier just to plug in and listen to an audiobook. But so this one, 100 pages, it's about 12,000 words and somebody could read it in about 2 or 3 hours. And it's designed to be a quick, easy read in order to be able to have that transfer of knowledge like immediately for the reader. Also, strategically, it weighs less. So it's cheaper to post, right? So there's a commercial side to it, and also it's slightly cheaper to print because when you're giving away 3,000 copies a year, well, you can imagine print and postage costs. I spend about 10 to 12,000 a year on both things combined, but I don't spend much money. I sponsor a few events and things like that, but marketing wise, I don't really spend much other money. And also because I monetize my book, I make about £500 a month back in book sales, which kind of contributes towards that marketing cost. So it kind of washes its own back. So strategically, the book works really well. I wanted to share one other book as well. I don't know if you're going to be doing the video or not, so I'll kind of talk.
Yes.
This is one of my favorite books of all time, not just for coaches, but businesses the world over. It's called Detox, Declutter, and Dominate by a guy called Perry Marshall, who is a brilliant business consultant.
Interesting.
And if you look at it,
I haven't heard.
So if you look at it, look how thin that is. It's 36 pages and it has the 7 steps to build a Renaissance business in it. And it's very like graphical. So it's got some nice images and everything. It's really well designed. So you can almost create like it doesn't have, my point is, it doesn't have to be a big, like Tolkien-esque 100,000 words. It
Right.
could be simple, which outlines the frameworks as a coach, which you help people with. And again, like the 7 steps, like Perry puts in here, I'm actually in the process of writing my own equivalent of this for coaches.
Okay.
So you can write a simple book, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. No, and I think people appreciate, especially business people, appreciate when there is no fluff.
Yeah.
Some of the feedback I get for my courses were like, thank you, there was no fluff. Like it was on the point. So don't try to inflate with, just artificially. So I'm totally with you on that. All right. Last question, difficult question. I tried to keep it till the end, although I wanted to ask all the time. You have unfair advantage, right? You can't disagree with that because you were a marketer, very, very well marketing. You had a business, so you had a business knowledge, marketing knowledge. So moving into coaching, you didn't have, well, I don't want to say you didn't have difficulty, but you had that unfair advantage of being a great marketer and being a business owner. So what would you say? What advice would you give the coaches who are coming from completely different background? Finance people, not marketing, finance people, I don't know, people from healthcare, any professional who had nothing to do with the marketing side of things that I think in the beginning is kind of so important for any business owner and starting coach. What advice would you give so that they can succeed?
So yes, the marketing side of things has definitely given me an unfair advantage. The unfair advantage is that I can discern very quickly what's going to work and what's not going to work just through my experience. But marketing is still a process of experimentation. You run 1,000 experiments and like 3 things will work for your practice, and so there's that side of it. But I think the missing part of that picture is that when I set up my practice, I was very goal focused in terms of, because like a lot of people are just like, oh, well, I'll do this coaching thing and I'll just start working with some clients and I'll charge some money. Like there's not much planning which goes into it. I knew from the moment I decided to be Robin Waite business coach, I set a goal to do more revenue than my marketing agency, but as a 1-person business. That was the one goal I set for myself. And then I started to reverse engineer how to get there. Marketing obviously was a part of it, but there was sales. There was also the structure of my coaching programs, which made a massive part of it. So take something as simple as goal-focused pricing, okay? And any coach listening to this, you can apply this basic principle with about 5 questions, and you will have the perfect model for your coaching practice. You can then start to plug the gaps as to how you're going to get the number of clients with the right price and things like that. So as I'll keep the numbers nice and simple as an example, I'll also keep this brief because I know we're up against time now. So let's say, for example, as a coach, you want to earn $100,000 a year, which is quite a normal goal for a coach to want to achieve, right? And that's question 1. How much do you want to earn? Okay. And be specific. Question number 2 is, were you to sell a 6-month coaching program to somebody, how much would you sell it for? And again, we want a specific packaged based price here. So let's say you're going to charge $100 a session, 2 sessions a month. So that's 12 sessions. It would be $1,200. Okay. Let's round it to $1,000 just to keep maths easy. And it's still early in the morning for me with not enough coffee. So that's question number 2 answered. How much are you going to sell it for? Question number 3, what we do is we take the big number and we divide it by the little number. So we take 100K, divide it by $1,000. That means we need to work with 100 clients this year. And this is where the first insight comes from most coaches. Their eyes pop out of their head and they're like, I can barely get 3 clients, let alone 100. And even if I was to get 100 clients, I've got no idea how I would serve them doing 2 sessions, a month with them. So this is our first clue. So we're looking at some basic supply and demand here. Okay, so we look at 100 clients, too much, right? How many clients realistically could you work with over the course of 12 months? Now, I now know from experience that for a coach working one-to-one with clients, about 20 is probably about the maximum. Okay, so next question, we take the 100K, we divide it by 20. Now we've got to come up with a product that's 5K. And again, coaches' eyes pop out their head because we've just 5x their prices. And well, I wasn't going to get 3 clients. Now I'm going to get 3 clients at 5K, 5 times the price. And panic, right? International sign of distress. But what we've got now is that's our business model that we want to work towards. You don't just go from 1K to 5K and stack no extra value in your coaching. You can do intensive days with your clients. You can do WhatsApp support 24/7. You can get other coaches and experts in at 5K to, etc. So now we know we need to service 25K clients. You design the business to make that work. Then we shift over to the demand side. And this is where we then switch on marketing. So we don't tackle marketing until we've got the business model nailed. Right. And then we look at it and go, right, how are we going to attract 20 clients? Well, to get 20 clients, 1 in 5 conversion rate, we probably need to sit 100 consultations. How are we going to sit 100 consultations? Well, maybe if we guest on some podcasts, we do some speaking gigs, we speak to as many people as we possibly can do and tell them about our coaching, then we might get those 100 consultations booked. So you kind of you start with the end in mind and reverse engineer it, and then you create the marketing strategy. So many coaches get this the wrong way around. They're like, right, build a website, jump on social media, and then they're going like, why is that? Post
daily on Instagram. Right.
It for want of a better phrase, and you can cut this out if you don't like it, Lydia, social media is bullshit, quite frankly. It's not. It has its place, and you will see me post on social, but because it's because I get to post on social, not because I have to. And there's a big difference.
No, absolutely. Okay, this was amazing, Robin. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry that it's too early in the morning. I could keep asking, and I'm sure our folks will get a bunch of value. But we'll stop there and tell them how they can find you online, and how they can get a book, this generous offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book, if they head on over to fearless.biz/TYS for Take Your Shot, and I'm sure you'll share the link somewhere in the show notes.
Yes, I will.
There is an option to contribute towards postage, but it's entirely optional. If you put your name and address into the form, I will send it irrespective of whether you paid or not for the postage. And yeah, it's one of my greatest joys of signing those books, getting them into the hands of great coaches and showing them what the potential is to grow their practice. And yeah, take them down to Pauline and post them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for your generosity, sharing all these secrets that some people keep in the closet and don't share. And yeah, all the best. And, I hope to connect more because I think, because we're doing similar thing, we have similar mission. I think we have a lot in the spirit of building partnership. I really hope this is the start of our partnership together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lidia. It's been a real pleasure.